I saved a whopping 1,460 hours of training time using a combination of Obsidian, Gemini, and an LM laptop. Previously, I'd spend a whole month learning the same information, watching countless videos and reading tons of articles and posts. Now, using my new approach to this same neural network combination, I get the same results, but not in a month, but in 10 to 15 minutes. And I get identical results as if I were doing it all manually. That's the beauty of optimization. Few people realize it, but traditional learning without this workflow has many very difficult problems. If you don't solve them, in the era of neural networks, you'll have a hard time competing with those who use them. But what exactly are these problems? The first problem is when you're learning a new technology. To do this, you watch a ton of YouTube videos, then read articles on websites, and read books and Telegram posts. This is exactly how I acquired various tricks, then gained new experience along the way, and ultimately mastered the technology. But it worked before this combination appeared. And I noticed a major flaw in this scheme. I'm not talking about drugs, but rather about the overall problem with the approach. I think you've noticed this too. You open 20 YouTube videos on the same topic to gain different knowledge. As a result, all the authors repeat the same things. From each video, you extract literally 20% of the information. It's always the same information. Ultimately, you just need to remove the duplicates, cut out the fluff, and extract the meat from the video. You get the same thing, but in a shorter time. And that's exactly what I solved. Now, the second problem. I read about 60 books a year, and I've noticed this. At least 5 or 10 books will be extremely introductory, and it turns out I already knew absolutely all this information. In the end, I wasted about 70 hours reading completely useless books. Again, I'll point out that they're useless to me because I already know this. But for beginners, this might be a no-brainer. That same book on digital minimalism might be useful to someone who hasn't even read it, but it might not be useful to me at all, because I've read dozens of similar books. So, the idea is this. There needs to be a neural network that can check whether I know this information or not. And only if I don't know it, it gives me this information. If the neural network realizes that this book doesn't contain any useful information for me, it simply writes outright, "You don't need to read this book because you already know this. It's in your Obsidian, in your knowledge base." Quote, ultimately, this was also resolved. I've already eliminated 10 books using this method that I don't need to read because I already know this. And in the end, I've saved about 150 or 200 hours. I'll show you this later too. And the third problem, you're choosing a new smartphone, laptop, or mini PC. You have clear requirements, but there's one problem. There are simply a million models. You then have to search for videos on YouTube and study each model yourself. In the end, I solved this too. Previously, this could have taken a whole week, or even a month, but my Nero-based setup. Simply find the models you need in 5 minutes, then study the price and specs, and it says, here are a couple of models. The best value for money and quality are these. Quote, if you suddenly need more RAM, here are 2 more models. If you need a reserve for 5 years, then this model. These are just some of the problems. I'll show you even more cool features. Ultimately, using this, you get results in 15 minutes, while those who don't use it waste weeks and months. I'll show you my real-life combat missions where I used all of this, and I'll show you the speed before and after. Moreover, all this distilled knowledge can be added to Obsidian. I'll also show you how to add Obsidian to this neural network bundle. So, here's the very first example. Before this scheme, I spent 3 months solving this problem, but now, using a neural network bundle, I can repeat it in 15 minutes. So, what was the problem? Just recently, I was choosing a country to live in. I had about 8 options. Each country needs to be studied, a separate note needs to be submitted, and everything needs to be written down point by point. So, I go to YouTube and start watching videos in a row. If they mention a fact about the country that's useful to me, I add Obsidian to the relevant note. Ultimately, this way, I get all the advantages and disadvantages of each country. Then I can compare everything, weed out the bad options, and keep only the most adequate ones. In the end, this created such a headache that you simply can't imagine. I spent 3 months watching a ton of videos about different countries and constantly came across the same information. I had to constantly rewind the integrations, the author's story about shashlik. In total, considering the pure working time and the length of the video data, I spent about 360 hours. Before that, I was also studying other countries. And now you can easily add another 360, or even several times more. And finally, when I did the same thing in the LM notebook in 15 minutes, I was simply blown away. Let me show you how I did it. So, let's go to the LM notebook. By default, there are ready-made notebooks. You can click Show All, and get ready-made notebooks on various topics. And in the sheet below, you get recent notebooks and you can create a new one. These are, roughly speaking, just different chats. So, let's create a notebook and label it. Let's call it Relocation. Next, go to the left column. We can add sources directly, that is, links to YouTube videos, articles, Telegram posts, websites, and so on. You can also have not out LM search for sources automatically. If you wanted to find websites automatically, simply select Depress Search here. Then enter a query. For example, Enter this query and click Search. It will find all the videos, websites, and so on you need. Then you can ask questions, but I personally used a different approach. First, for convenience, download this extension. It allows you to add YouTube videos directly. What's more, it allows you to add an entire channel. So, if the channel is entirely about Armenia, we get all the information about the country by entering just one query. So, I found an example channel here. Scroll to the very top and click here. This appeared after installing the extension. Next, you can either create a new notebook or select an existing one. So, click and select Relocation. Now all the videos are processed, and when opening an individual video, you can also click on the LM notebook and add it separately. Or click Add Source, upload a file, select the file on your disk, paste the desired text fragment, or click Sites, and upload the desired links here. So, the videos are uploaded and we insert this prompt. Again, I initially wrote it in my own words, then inserted this prompt into Gemini, saying that I'd rework the prompt for Notukla. Next comes the task, Analysis Instructions. It studies all the relevant topics, then highlights the pros and cons, including information about medicine, transportation, internet, climate, and so on. Next, there's rental costs, approximate prices, and the result goes to Down. Each point is a separate thought. And finally, at the end, it provides the source. This is how it differs from GPT and Gemini because it doesn't fantasize, but takes information strictly from sources, and ultimately, we get all the information. Scroll down and there's information about Bulgaria. Minimum wage, taxes, cost of living, real estate, and so on. Then there's Poland, then the Czech Republic, and so on. We throw all this into Obsidian. Let's say, here's what we get. Marks like this. I immediately understand approximate prices, what rent is, what the climate is like, and everything else. If I were to study all of this manually, how long would it take me to study these videos? It would take many times longer. Moreover, he also added a comparison. Then I can use this chat to ask questions based on this information. Let's say, like this. I make an additional request. Ultimately, he takes all these videos and also the chat and gives me an answer. The result is a rating, perhaps for all these countries. Also, each point is accompanied by a source. We bring this very text. That is, he didn't make this up. He took it from the video, and below is that very video. Moreover, based on all this information, you can create an audio or video summary, flashcards for Anki, then individual tests, infographics, or a presentation. Let's say, here I made a mind map. This is the main branch. Next, let's look at the downsides. Let's open it, and here are the downsides. These are homeless animals, poor road quality, economic problems, low wages. And in general, this is all real, because I studied Bulgaria manually. Next, we get a range of rent, approximate food costs, and so on. I think this is absolutely brilliant. It even found approximate prices for studios. So, next, the same thing, but in infographic form. It's basically a cheat sheet with rent prices, housing prices, a comparison with Turkey, and everything else. There's also a separate table like this. I don't even understand how I ever did all this manually before. Moreover, here are separate cards for you to study. I've added a new technology here, and you can study it. Then you click download and get this file for Anki. Next, I created tests separately. We select an option and get an explanation. It also creates an audio summary and a video summary below it. Let's say you're getting home and you're not comfortable reading. Just turn on the audio. It will give you the shortest possible summary. By removing all sorts of words, fillers, swear words, and other junk, you get a perfectly finished file. If someone needs to read 20 PDF files with reports or the same technical specifications, just upload it here, hand over the audio, and he'll explain everything very briefly. Also, as you know, all this time I've been giving away the Python op course and the private channel as a gift. As a result, I'm currently working on a Linux course, and eventually I'll need to make the private channel a separate product. Right now, when you purchase the AOP course, you get it for free. You also get perpetual updates and lifetime access to both. Those who sign up before I launch the private channel will get the same experience. They also get all the updates, a very detailed AP course, and all the basics, all my tips, research, and real-world optimization cases. I show you my memory-saving methods so you can improve your programs. And I'm already making a separate video for private, which I won't upload to YouTube. For example, about Notebook LM. I also have some tips that I'll only publish in my private channel because I don't want to create competition or publish this for a huge audience. There's some information that should only be shared with a limited circle of people. That's exactly what I do in private, showing various working cases, sharing my experience, and demonstrating my security tips. I also make videos about Linux, publish tools, mini courses, and more. When I create a separate private course, the likelihood will be the same. I'll charge separately for the course and the same for the private one, because updates are constant and access is permanent. So, while I haven't yet created a separate private one, you can get the APM course and the private one for the same price. To do this, leave a request and I'll be waiting for you in private. Ultimately, if you add up all the time spent in all similar tasks, the figure will far exceed the limit I indicated in the title. But that's not all. Let's remember about optimizing books. We're handing over a new notebook specifically for this task. Let's take the very popular book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We can add it directly or first research the reviews. Launch DePresssearch and enter a search query for reviews. Then click OK, and it starts searching. By the time you've looked at the reviews, you can already tell whether the book is good or not. But you also need to find a PDF of the book and upload it here. I added a separate PDF and clicked Add Source. Then, upload the file. There are certain formats it supports. It doesn't support Rich Dad, Poor Dad, so you can use the same caliber tool to convert it to PDF or text. This is only a preliminary analysis, but it already tells me whether the book is worth reading. You can even add your Obsidian database here as a separate file. The entire database needs to be converted to a single PDF file, so it can then search this PDF based on the book and reviews to determine whether the book is useful for you. Again, how do I export the entire Obsidian database to PDF? You can either look for ready-made plugins or write your own script. This is exactly what I'm doing for now, but the idea of comparing with Obsidian itself is really cool, although I need to remove some information from it so I can export it all to PDF later. I'll probably export it using a regular Python script. It's very simple. We run through all the files and add them as text to the PDF. Moreover, it doesn't even have to be a PDF, just a text file. This will be even much easier. Then we add it here and get a comparison with Obsidian. I'll also show you another way to create a single file for the database. Open this script. Specify the path to the database itself. Next is the result file. Then, separately, ignore the directory and files, because I have images in them. I don't really need the information here. Next, it runs through all the folders and adds everything to the result. Finally, we run it and get a separate file. It has this many lines. We load this file into the LM notebook. So, in the end, we ask the question in those very files. Based on my Obsidian database, specifically the results and also the book itself, he takes my financial notes and realizes the book is useless to me because I read it back in 2018 and have known all this for a long time. He then analyzes it and says it's probably not worth reading. He then explains why, and then follows the reviews he pulled from various sites. These are real reviews from something like Trace and the like, not something he made up as part of GPT. In the end, I've already sifted through 10 books this way. That's about 150 or 200 hours. Furthermore, you can request a chapter-by-chapter analysis or ask which specific chapters would be useful, specifically based on your Obsidian database. Ultimately, Obsidian is a true reflection of your brain. By filling it out, you get short, little notes that you can reread later. Moreover, it's a whole new weapon for neural networks. We've, roughly speaking, connected our brains to neural networks. If you're unsure whether a book might be useful, simply enter a query. That is, ask for a summary. Next, I'll do an audio summary, then a separate presentation, infographics, and a mind map or mind map. Mind map really makes learning information very easy. Finally, enter a query and then click on the desired items. The time we save could actually be spent on a complex, comprehensive book that would actually be profitable and isn't in our database. Calculate for yourself how much time you could save this way over a year or 5 years. It would be tens of thousands of hours. Also, while the LM notebook is more of an information source that extracts information as precisely as possible, it's not fully capable of writing a full-fledged script, generating a website based on the information, generating a document, or discussing sources. So, go to Gemini, click here, and select the LM notebook. Ignore the language, because I'm in Poland right now. Next, we take Rode and add it. We ask them to write a script for a video review of the book. The LM laptop has a ton of sources, and it doesn't handle this task very well. The formatting is really poor, but we add it all to Gemini, send it, and get the result. You can do the same thing with studying countries, different technologies, and so on. That is, you extract specific information from the LM laptop, and then, based on this precise information, use Gemini, which can explain, generate something, and so on. In the end, here's the script, and judging by the book, he really highlighted the necessary points. This is exactly what the book says. If you think that's all, you're very much mistaken, because the LM laptop has so many cases and features that you could study it for weeks. I also have a ton of optimization, but they simply won't fit in this video. So, if you're looking for those new tricks and ways to speed up your learning and work that I've personally tested and used, please like this and leave a comment. I'll show you even more awesome ways to save your time. I'll also make a separate video for Privet, as promised.